Hi, class. Hey, good job this past week. But first, let me point out something. I'd like to see a little more interaction, particularly in Group 1. I think there's a few of you are, a few of the members of Group 1 are doing a good job answering the questions, but not interacting with another student. And remember what the guidance is for 100% credit for discussion in a week. You need to do both. Do a good job answering the question and interact with at least one other student in a reasonably meaningful way. Okay. So, Group 1 members, please, if that applies to you, pay more attention to interactions in subsequent weeks. Okay. All right. We had 4 questions of which I wanted you to answer 2, and the first one was, how do the authors Abrams and Potter measure the strength of terror group leadership? There was some good discussion on that. I think one of the things I'm a little worried about is some of us kind of implied that they measured it by the strength of a group leadership by the extent to which the group members committed acts of violence against civilians. I don't think that's a direct measure of the strength of terror group leadership. I think it's an indirect measure. You could have some strong leaders who want to attack civilians, even though Abrams and Potter seem to think that's not the case. A more direct measure might be, and this is touched on by a number of the comments, is to what extent do they discipline members who commit attacks on civilians? To what extent do does the group adhere to the strategic guidance that's articulated by the leaders? I think those are better direct measures of the strength of terror group leadership. Important point there is, though, that as the authors say, there's a principal and agent problem, whereas the principals intend one thing, and sometimes the agents do something else, and that's from business schools kind of stuff too. So obviously, strong principals, strong leaders get their agents to do what they want them to do. That also applies, I think, and I think a few of you everyone who answered this question got it right, is that same sort of problem exists with respect to state sponsorship. A state, in that case, would be the principal, and the agent would be the terror group that it sponsors. And there is a concern that states have that the people that they sponsor, are they going to do, from their perspective, the right thing, the thing that the states want them to do. So I think that the general idea there is that it probably makes more sense if you were a state sponsor to sponsor a group with strong leadership, because you'd have a higher confidence that the group would do what you want it to do than if you sponsored a group with quite weak leadership. Okay. Next question was, apart from the fact that educational institutions are soft targets, why terrorists attack them? I think you all did a great job answering that. There's a lot of good reasons, one of which is, of course, that the educational institutions are educated, and some terror groups don't want a local population educated. They don't want women educated in particular because it conflicts with their traditional values. So that's another reason to attack it. Some of you pointed out that attack institutions and faculty. Some of you also pointed out that it's a way for terror groups to recruit, and here we're using the word recruit in a way that's not typical. It's really kidnapping and enslaving, indoctrinating, brainwashing young people to make them members of the terror group, or maybe just cannon fodder for the terrorist group. So, in any event, yes, that's the reason why they attack educational institutions, to hijack or Shanghai students there. Also, educational institutions are symbols of authority of the state, and to the extent that you demolish those symbols, it undermines people's confidence in the state. And I think that's also a very good point. And the other one, in terms of terrorism, what could be more terrifying than knowing that if you send your kids to school where you think they're automatically safe, that they're not, and it really would, I think, undermine your confidence in the society and in the ability of government to maintain stability and order. So anyway, a lot of good reasons why, and of course, one reason is they have symbolic value, and they're soft targets is, of course, another part of it. Okay, why is there a high percentage of the fourth question is, why is there a high percentage of individuals with criminal records in jihadist groups in Western Europe? And you all correctly pointed out that that's because a lot of them became acquainted, a lot of ex-criminals or former criminals became indoctrinated into the jihad movement, became radicalized while they were in prison. So when they get out, they join terror groups. There are also, I think it's true that one of our readings in the past talked about jihadi entrepreneurs. A lot of them were criminals, and they had sort of street cred and like a street gang sort of sense that made them, I guess, a little bit more successful in terms of recruiting and who they recruit. They recruit other people maybe in there, or that they knew from their criminal activity, or maybe other members of their criminal gang, which would, of course, increase the number of criminals or ex-criminals, people with criminal records in the jihadist networks. And what difference does it make in terms of terror group tactics? And I think you all pointed out that it probably makes them the seasoned veteran effect, as I think a few of you pointed out, is a good thought. Makes them maybe a little bit better in terms of covering their tracks, a little bit better in terms of committing acts of violence without getting caught, or at least with the expectation that they wouldn't get caught. So I think those are good points. And we had a little discussion about whether you'd expect seasoned veterans to create more sophisticated or less sophisticated types of attack. And I think who knows ultimately, but I think that's a good point that, sometimes people just do what's the easiest thing to do at the time, what weapons are available, et cetera. It may not be highly sophisticated, but it could, of course, still be inspired, conducted, organized, et cetera, by people with criminal records. So, in any event, thanks a lot for your good work. And please do remember the second part of the requirement with the discussions, and that is to interact with at least one other class member, group member each week, okay? All right, thanks a lot.